you could say, well, the only person I'm hurting is myself. Well, yeah, but that's still you using a drug that you illegally obtained is still against the law.
So the name of your law firm is, I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right, Langia?
Lingia, yeah. I mean, everyone pronounces it differently. Lingia is the right way.
Awesome. And so you started this law firm, and it seems like your focus is on healthcare and like specifically aesthetics. Does that sound right?
Yeah. So my specific focus is healthcare and aesthetics, and that's because I used to be the general counsel of a pretty big aesthetics practice, and so now I just help a lot of clients in different states.
That's perfect. Yeah. So, I put out this YouTube video. It was, I guess, a critique of the DIY injectables community, and
Yeah.
I didn't like it, and I guess I could have expected that. But it was like kind of like I was just figuring out YouTube. I didn't realize people were going to actually watch it and attack me. But I realized like I didn't know too much about the legal side of things. I just kind of, I guess, made some assumptions based on like my training and what I thought made sense and didn't make sense, but it'd be great to get your input on that. And I also see like some of my colleagues posting videos of themselves like just injecting themselves with Botox. Like I don't know if, I mean, there's certain, I guess, ethics around that, but also maybe like a legal side of it that I'm also just not familiar with. So this is where I just wanted to pick your brain on it so you can enlighten us, so I'm not just telling people, I guess, the wrong information or just kind of like skirting by facts. I guess that was the impetus for this discussion.
Sure, I'm happy to make some enemies too. No problem.
Well, I think as long as like, there are things based in fact, like I understand people's desire for freedoms and people not wanting to pay a lot of money to go to someone for an injection. Like I get that side of their argument, but like, I'm always about like just patient safety and just doing what's safe, or if it's not safe, then just not doing it. And that's how I run my practice. And it's sad to me that people are just willing to do whatever it takes just to get filler in their face, but whatever. So first thing on our list, so who's allowed to obtain injectables? And I guess we're mainly talking about Botox or Botox-like products, neurotoxins, and fillers in the United States. Like, do you need a special license? Like, who can obtain it?
Yeah, great question. So in the United States, to buy Botox legally from the vendor, which is AbbVie or Allergan, you need to be a doctor. So you need to either have a medical director for your practice who's a doctor, or have some sort of doctor affiliations. But the person signing the application to buy the Botox has to be a U.S. licensed doctor with an active U.S. license.
Yeah, like I set up, accounts with these companies when I first started the practice, and yeah, they asked for my license and they gave me like a specific account number. And yeah, I didn't know if there's like other ways you can get. I know some people go online and they, I guess, buy fillers. So then who are they buying from? And is that, like, if you're not a doctor and you just go online, you find, filler for some cheaper price and you buy it, is the act of doing that illegal, or is it not really illegal?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, okay, so the first question is, what are they buying? So, I mean, people may be able to obtain Botox from like Canada or Europe, or God knows what it is in a package. It's just like if you go to Canal Street and buy a Louis Vuitton bag, like, it's going to be $100 versus $2,000. And there's a reason for that. The reason is most likely it's not genuine. So a lot of times there are companies online who, say, oh yeah, buy Botox from us. The packaging looks different. The bottle looks different. And who knows what it is? Maybe It's real Botox from Canada, or maybe it's fake Botox from someone else. But the other thing is that Botox has to be refrigerated while it's in transit. And like, it can't not be refrigerated even for, 2 days or whatever. So even if they possibly got real Botox from the internet, who knows like what it went through. When it arrives from Allergan, it arrives on like dry ice. People buying stuff on the internet are taking a huge risk and usually not even saving that much money. So it's really a bad idea, and it's against the law. For doctors who do it, or nurses or whatever, you could lose your license for that. There are problems with the Drug Enforcement Agency and other issues. Like I've heard of people in different states, the feds come to your office and they're like, okay, time for you to go to jail. That's not a good day.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. So if you're like a layperson and you're looking to get some, Botox off the internet, you don't really care if it's refrigerated or not because you don't know, let's say, that it should be, and you end up getting it, like who would prosecute something like that? Would it be like the state would potentially hear about it and come after you, or only if you then start to sell that? Like, or just the fact that you've obtained it, if I don't know, if the feds or the state like find out about it, they can come after you? Like,
Both. It would be both. It would be both the federal government through the DEA and the FBI, and the state government and the state attorney general and all these other places. So it would be like from 10 different possible places, all very bad places. Yeah, people do it, but it's definitely a very risky proposition and a very bad idea. And it's not something, if you're a medical professional, you're doing it, there's a ton of liability and not something that you can recover from. Most likely you're going to lose your license.
right. And if you're like not a medical person, just kind of a lay person, and you do it, I mean, are there people going after these folks nowadays, or it's just kind of like a potential risk in the future? Like, is it still kind of too small of a community that they need to kind of be worried, or it's growing and there's more interest from, I guess, the feds about it?
Yeah, so it's definitely growing and there's definitely more interest. So I'm hearing more and more, I've had people contacted me who are not doctors who have ordered, things off the internet and then are being investigated by different boards and the state government and the federal government. So it's definitely, as Botox and other things have become more popular, it's definitely more and more on the radar of the regulators, for sure.
Now, I guess this is like the big question. What about people who obtain these drugs or implants, I guess, as technically fillers are considered, and say they're lay people, and so it was illegal, like we talked about, to obtain it, but now they're going to the next level and starting to inject themselves with it. Now, I was trying to look this stuff up about because technically it could be considered like self-harm, and like, it's totally unclear to me like how much of that is legal. Like, what if you wanted to perform surgery on yourself? Like, it's hard to figure out just based off of just like Wikipedia reading or whatever where the line gets drawn on that. But I'm really kind of super interested in your response on this one.
Sure. Well, okay, I think it goes back to these things are drugs and medical devices or implants, right? And so for you or me, I'm not a licensed medical provider. So me, if I was to buy something like that on the internet and try to self-prescribe it or give it to myself, that's totally not okay, but also exposes you to so much potential harm. And you could say, well, the only person I'm hurting is myself. Well, yeah, but that's still you using a drug that you illegally obtained is still against the law. So there's a reason why you need to be a medical doctor to obtain these things in the first place. So by self-injecting, you're doing something completely inappropriate and illegal.
And then what about the people who then make videos about themselves injecting themselves, and in a way sort of like marketing their injection techniques or things like that? I mean, does that then violate more rules, or is that just more of the same badness?
I mean, I don't want to date myself, but like, I don't know if you remember like Napster or those types of like file, right? Like by enabling people to do bad things, you yourself are becoming like criminally responsible, and that's why those people got in trouble. So I would say that there's an argument. If, let's say, I go on YouTube and then I see Amy's video about how to self-inject Botox, and I go and I inject myself and my eyes don't open anymore for months or whatever, I would sue Amy, YouTube, every place that I could find, and Amy's not going to have a good defense. So I think it's, you're helping people commit basically a crime.
Yeah.
So that is definitely not something that's okay.
Yeah, so I can tell you that since my video went up, the whole community just kind of came after me and whatever. I turned off comments for a little while because I just got tired of I have thick enough skin, but this spread of misinformation, which I think is a big problem on social media, we've all kind of been addressing as a society when it comes to politics and just anything, right? But I was kind of like witness of that, like very personally, where people are like, oh, that's not illegal and you can do that, and like, who are you to say? You're just like money hungry and all these things. And I was like, this is crap. And like, I'm like, I can't reply to every message and stuff. So I turned it off, and then eventually I turned it back on because some of those comments were spilling over to other videos. And I'm like, this is silly. Like, I'll give people an outlet and just continue to try to to educate. But since that time, so the person who I made the video about, like a reaction video to her video, she then made a big reaction to mine, which was, I didn't even watch it. It was 15 minutes, and I'm like, whatever. But then I went back on her channel, and I noticed more recently she actually took down all of her videos showing herself injecting herself. So she still has videos about like unboxing of this, you know, fake filler or whatever she gets, or, you know, just kind of generally talking about technique. But there are no more videos. And then, you know, I think YouTube is coming down on some of these folks and pushing them maybe to, I'm sure there's some sort of outlet for them on another site, but I think maybe YouTube doesn't want to be a part of it.
Yeah, if you're teaching people how to do something illegal, and if you are the platform that's enabling people to teach something illegal, you are also going to be in trouble. So I'm sure you eventually will, you know, crack down on all that stuff. Yeah, I mean, I think with the rise of anything, there's always like the rise of DIY, right? Like we live in a DIY culture. So, you know, but DIY has a lot of risks, and it's just, I don't know, it just seems like I ordered a bike from the internet. Very nice. But then it came disassembled in a box. And I was like, oh, I could assemble this bike. Like, I've never done it before. Let me watch a YouTube video. It was midnight. I watched the video. I started assembling this bike. I cut my finger, like really bad.
Oh, no.
A piece on the bike that was a critical part.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah. You know, and I was like, oh, I should have never tried that. That was very stupid. So I think that's DIY. I think there's a tremendous responsibility we have ourselves as people to other people. If we're teaching people how to do bad things, illegal things, that's where we're just being bad. The platform that's enabling to happen is, you know, participating. Right. And potentially there's like a lot of harm.
Yeah, my other issue with some of these folks is that, you know, they say like, oh, we can do it ourselves and all that. But then once there is a problem, which inevitably there will be, then it's not like they're going to just stay home and deal with it themselves. You know, they're going to seek out medical attention. So then I guess my next question is like, what about like their health insurance company? Like, would they fully cover their stay if like they develop, you know, an occlusion and then an infection and they get admitted with IV antibiotics? Like, could the insurance company say, well, you know, you kind of did this to yourself. You were doing illegal things. Like, we're not paying for this? Or is that not common?
You know, I've never heard of that happening, but at the same time, I've heard of things happening where the insurance company will find any reason to deny a claim. Yeah. So if you're injecting yourself and things go wrong, bad things can go wrong. And so insurance denying it is definitely a big possibility. Like you said, bad things do happen once in a while. You're completely unprepared for that, and you have a very limited amount of time. Like if there's a, you know, a vascular occlusion, which you know better than me, you have like probably less than an hour to try to treat it.
Yeah,
and
the quicker the better. Yeah.
As a layperson, you wouldn't even know looking at it, and then next thing you know, like your nose falls off.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, I know it's insane risk, and yeah, and you really have to wonder if some of these things even make people look better. You know, I think in general, well, this is like a whole other discussion, but I think we're overdoing it with fillers as a community, as a general community, I guess, of everyone who's injecting, maybe even the DIYers. Where can you go and read these laws? Like, where does it say that that's illegal, or that, you know, you shouldn't do it, or else like this is what could happen to you? Like, is like where can someone read up on that?
So good question. There isn't a place that I actually know of that like where you can actually read up, like that I could think of off the top of my head. I'm sure there is, because there are laws against like importing drugs into the US, but I don't know exactly where the regulations are. But that's a good question. It's something I could like find out for sure, and then you could hear people, but I don't know off the top of my head.
Yeah, no problem. And then so who in general is allowed to perform these injectables? Because obviously, yeah, you have like medical doctors, and that's one category that, you know, we know is allowed. But then you have a lot of mid-level providers. Sometimes it's a nurse, sometimes it's an esthetician or a nurse practitioner. So who's allowed, and is it set by the state, or are these like federal rules?
Sure. So it's set by the state who's allowed, but in general, there are two kind of questions. Who can prescribe it, and then who can administer it? So who prescribes kind of the same across all states. And in the US, that's a doctor, a nurse practitioner, or a physician assistant. So that person has to prescribe it for like a particular patient. And then in some states, not in all states, in some states, an RN, a registered nurse, can administer it. And then in some states, it's kind of vague, but possibly an esthetician could administer it.
Really?
But not be a great idea. But it is in some states where the regulation is vague, some people interpret it as, you know, basically someone with just an esthetician license can administer it. But that there are very few states like that where it's kind of vague like that. For example, in New York, you have to be a registered nurse to administer it, but you cannot prescribe it as a registered nurse. So you would still need to have a doctor, nurse practitioner.
Supervising,
Yeah,
provide. Okay.
that person have to first do a good faith exam on that client.
Mm-hmm.
Only then can somebody like an RN administer it.
Do you see any of these laws like getting strengthened more, and like us hearing more about this in the media, that like someone was injecting themselves and now, you know, I don't know, they're in jail? Like, are there going to be like kind of more crackdowns on this as more of it is practice, you think?
Yeah, so yeah, the FDA is definitely talking about it. They're working on revising like the labeling for fillers to have a black box warning, just like they have for Botox.
Wow.
So they will say, oh, like, you know, you could occlude a vessel, like, you know, make sure that you're getting a, you know, an experienced provider, all these things. So right now in fillers, there is no scary, you know, warning like there should be.
Right.
So the FDA is definitely talking about it in a very real way. And I think as the market grows, you know, let's say it's been growing, what, 15% a year or so, the regulation will catch up for sure, not at the same pace, but it is on the FDA's agenda, no question. So yeah, definitely.
So does the FDA like also enforce, or do they then work with other organizations that will enforce that? Like, let's say they come up with the black box warning and people are still doing all this illegal activity, then who primarily enforces that rule? Can it still be
The Drug Enforcement Agency?
Oh, DEA? Okay, got it. All right, cool. Yeah, interesting stuff. Yeah, like I said, I just, you know, I just had a feeling, a gut feeling that it wasn't proper and there were issues with this whole thing. I tried to, I guess, make a video that was meant to be a little funny, a little lighthearted, but also educate properly through it. And I didn't expect like the backlash on it, but in a way I'm happy it happened, because I think it brings all this stuff front and center, and it has to be discussed, you know, because they can't pretend like it's not happening. So, and then everyone's like, oh, well, you're just trying to make money. Like, injectables in my practice are a very small percentage of what I now do. It's primarily surgery, so I really don't make that much money on injectables, but I've taught injectables to other doctors and I still practice it. I think it has a place in the aesthetic world, but it has to be done, you know, tastefully and also very safely. Anything you want to add on the topic?
Well, I would say like the DIY people are making it very dangerous for all the licensed people too. Because what's going to happen is, let's say there's a bad event and a DIY person was the one injecting. It's going to be on the news, and then from there, you know, state officials are going to say, oh, now we need to regulate this more. Now we need to have new laws. Now we need to have new penalties, and that'll be bad for the whole industry. For the licensed people to say, listen, you know, you unlicensed people, it's great that you're in this DIY thing, but why don't you go to school, get the degree? It doesn't take forever. And then you can do this if you feel very passionate about it. And then you could educate the whole world. But by doing this and exposing people to, you know, potential risk, which there definitely is with these products, these people are putting the whole industry in danger, not just the people they're injecting. Because all that's going to happen is one person's going to like lose their eye or nose, whatever, and then the whole industry will be more regulated.
Yeah, for sure. And then people are just going to be more scared in general to get that. They're going to be, oh, that's like that thing I saw on the news that like made someone blind. Like, I don't want that, you know,
Right.
Not realizing who the injector was, like that it could have just been just literally anybody, and that it really wasn't being done properly. So great. No, this was, I think, really awesome. Yeah, thank you so much again for joining me. And, you know, we'll see, like, as updates happen in the legal world or whatever, definitely let us know, and we'll see where all this goes. But hopefully people can stay safe out there.